I consider myself one of the most fortunate people in the world to have been involved with the shows and with Elvis and the Colonel. It was an awesome time.
Oh, see, CC Rider. Oh, see what you have done.
I think Elvis Presley's music will be here forever. Anybody gets depressed, something's bothering, just go play one of his CDs. It'll make you feel good.
It's not the music that stands the test of time, it's Elvis.
When we went with him, he was kind of at his peak, I think, in 1971. And he really started that peak at around about 1969 at that TV special we did. And when we went with him, he was just really, really had it together.
But there were moments when I knew Elvis as well as anybody. But that's the charm of Elvis too, is that he would let his guard down and he would share himself with you and let him be known at times to the extent that he could anyone. And so people left genuinely feeling like, I know Elvis.
I'm a steamroller, baby. I'm bound to roll all over you. I'm a steamroller, baby. I'm bound to roll all over you.
I think in his own way, Elvis was a perfectionist too. And when you stand still, you're not moving forward. As time went on, Elvis progressed from the raw, hormonal-driven blue suede shoes and all that sort of thing. He matured. That's the way I see it. His music matured. And I felt it was really better as the years went on.
He was like a caged animal. He couldn't stand to be in the studio. He couldn't stand to be in a vocal booth and not move. He's very spontaneous, and he always stood right in front of the drums to express the beat, the emotion of what he was singing. I never realized that so much until we started doing the movies, this Elvis the Concert, where I had to listen just to his voice a lot of times. And he would go in the studio and he'd start a song, and if it wasn't feeling right to him, he'd pick the microphone up off the record, walk over in front of the drum set, which was all in an isolated booth, and stand there until he felt it.
I'm a steamroller, baby. I'm bound to roll over you. I'm a steamroller, baby. I'm bound to roll over you.
I think he's one of the best performers I have ever seen in my life. I have never seen anybody that could communicate to an audience like he does.
It was the pinnacle of the business, and the energy coming off the stage from the singers and the band and him, and then the energy coming back to us from the crowd was just incredible, and it was the highest of highs.
I've never seen anybody, live performer, and I've seen a lot of them, do what Elvis could do. Elvis did things clinically correct. He was technically one of the best artists, and I didn't know it at the time. I was too young, too naive. But I will tell you that after I became an adult and had a record company, I looked for people like that, and I never found any. That, they could hear it. They had perfect or relative pitch, and they'd be on stage, and Elvis would hear an errant note hit by the trombone player in Joe Guercio's band. He'd stop the band. Hold on one second. Let's do that again. He would the beat, the cadence of the music would be off. It would just there would be some small thing that someone would either make a mistake or just not be up to tempo or something, and Elvis would stop, and we'd do it all over again. Our concerts were much like being in the studio. They had to be spot on. They had to be 100% totally technically correct. And that's because Elvis felt like his fans deserved 100%. It was not about ego. It was not about, you know, I'm doing this to show everybody that I'm Elvis Presley and you're not. That wasn't what it was about. And some artists are that way, by the way, but it wasn't Elvis. What Elvis was trying to convey, and I didn't know it then, I came to appreciate it, was that he, you know, these people had paid whatever they had paid. And they were sitting in a crowded auditorium, and these were Elvis fans. And he wanted to give them 100% of the show, and substandard was not going to work for him.
Oh, see, CC Rider. Oh, see what you have done. I said, see, CC Rider. Oh, see.
Colonel and one of his staff were driving from Palm Springs, where Colonel's wife was staying with her nurses, back into Los Angeles because Colonel had to go to the office on Monday morning. It was Sunday afternoon, and they turned on the radio, and President Nixon was speaking from the Wall of China. He had opened negotiations with China. And Colonel said, you know, this is making history. This is incredible. Everyone around the world is watching this. And then he said, Elvis is a worldwide star. He should be the first to sing via satellite so that everyone can see him at the same time. This will be the biggest audience he ever had.
Well, I'm going away, baby, and I want to back this off. I'm going away, baby, and I want to back this off. If I find me a good girl, I want to be back at all. What I say.
So this was a big challenge for Elvis. I mean, doing a live performance, you had to be live, and you come on at a certain time, and it cuts you off at a certain time. So you got to finish the show within that 58 minutes, wherever it is. And it was a big challenge. But you know, it was a great challenge for him. He took the challenge. If you saw the show, he looked so handsome, good looking. He got himself in great shape for that. And he did that show just like, and we all figured he'd be a nervous wreck. He went out there and just did it. And he did a great job, and he was right on the moment when it was supposed to be over with. He finished the show. It was a very exciting moment for all of us. I mean, we didn't know what to expect and how he was going to do it, and he did it. He did it right the way it was, as we know. A billion people around the world seen him live.
It was so amazing because we had to be right on. I mean, just right straight on. And we did this show for about a little better than an hour, which went around the world. And it was quite an experience.
Born in the heat of the desert, my mother died giving me life.
Before we started, Marty Pacetto was counting it down. I said, when I drop my hands, I said, this is the first time this first note is going to go. I mean, we're going all over the world. You know, with a picture and the note, and those guys just played. That show was, my guys were tight. Everybody was tight. It was just a flicker. Great.
After another, I've climbed them all one by one. Oh, but this time, Lord, you gave me a mountain. A mountain.
We never really quite understood the importance of what we were doing until later on. They told us how many countries with the percentage of TV sets were turned on and this and that. And it was boggling. And we'd probably been a lot more nervous if we'd really understood. But it was a live simulcast of the show that we did, you know. And it was very electrifying. It was just, I've talked about his ability to rise to the top levels of the audience response and the intensity. Well, this thing was, if it was 1 to 100, it was 100 all the way. You know, there was no holding back.
Well, in 1958, I got drafted into the Army. And it just so happens, a very big famous entertainer at the same time got drafted a couple of weeks later after I did. And just so happens, we met while we were in the service. I was not in the entertainment business. I'm from Chicago, had nothing to do with entertainment. Became friends with Elvis in the service, and he asked me to go to work for him, and I was with him from 1960 till he passed away. Well, in 1969, Colonel Parker signed a deal here in Las Vegas with Kirk Kerkorian for the International Hotel. And but before that, Elvis, we'd come here and hang out in Vegas. We loved Vegas in those days. We'd come here for a week and stay for 4 weeks. We'd go see all the big stars in town, all the shows, and just hung out. It was great. So Colonel apparently cut Elvis a deal at the International Hotel for him to play there for 5 years, twice a year, and one in January, one in August, 28 days, 2 shows a night straight. No days off, not like today where, you do 1 show a day and you're off for 3 days. 28 days straight, that 56 shows.
The International had opened up, and I went in to talk to Mr. Shufi who was about getting the gig. It was a major hotel in those days. Barbara was going to open it, and I talked to him, and he asked me. We talked. Bill Miller was the entertainment director. We talked, and the fact that I only wanted to have to work the hotel if the headliner requested me blew the gig for me. So they hired somebody else, and he was there for, I think, the first engagement of Elvis. I don't know how that went, but all I know is that Alex Shupi called me after that, and we sat down and talked, and we made our deal. And I was never an Elvis Presley fan. Starting there. I come out of an acoustic world, and this was rock and roll. My wife loved them. Love Me Tender. She saw it 300 times. I just wasn't a fan. And the first time I said hello to him when we shook hands, there's a charisma there I cannot explain. I became a big, gigantic Elvis Presley.
Why can't you see what you're doing to me when you don't believe a word I'm saying?
One Friday evening, I got a call from my friend Larry and said, we've been auditioning drummers for 2 or 3 weeks, and we've tried everybody in town, and we got one guy coming tomorrow night, and they asked me if I knew anybody. So when they finally asked me, I told them about you. So can you come tomorrow? So I slept my drums, get them in a taxi cab, fly them into LA, and take them to the studio where they're rehearsing, and set them up. And they almost thought that they had the drummer. The other drummer came in on my drums and played, and they were all nodding and smiling and saying, yeah, this is, in so many words, it wasn't verbal, but you could tell everybody was happy. So as they got through, everybody kind of walked away and started putting their instruments in their cases. He says to Colonel Parker, you just bought this ticket for this guy to come out here, so I guess it got him where his heart is, and he went up to Elvis. I could hear him watching, rather talking, and so Elvis turns to everybody and says, guys, we got one more drummer, and you could see the looks on everybody's face like, oh no, just when we thought we had it nailed down. So I go in there, and we start playing a couple of songs. Immediately, he and I had this great rapport visually through eyes, watching each other. And the long and short of it is that I think that's what made the difference in him choosing me over the other guy at that particular time, was because, well, that's what he told me anyways, because he says, you watched everything I did. I could wiggle my little finger and you'd do something to accent it or something, And later on when I talked to DJ about it, he used to say, hey, yeah, it's like playing for a stripper. You catch every movement, and that I instinctively did it, and it worked.
When you don't believe a word I'm saying, well, don't you know, caught in a trap, I can't walk out because I love you too much.
We opened in 1969 in Vegas. We had a tour set up right after the gig here, okay? So we had a couple days off, and then we had a plane here, and we took off to go on tour. I think we had like 12 cities we had to go to. And at that time, Elvis, we did a show every night, and Saturday and Sunday with a matinee and a night show. There was no days off. We did a show, we'd go to the next town, did a show. So it became like a routine. We got really well, we had great security guys work all with us together. A valet guy, transportation guy, and just so everybody had their certain job to do. And we all learned as we went along, make sure all the little kinks were out of it. And we became such an organized group that a lot of other people and security people and other police officers in other towns we would meet, they said, you guys are the most organized people we've ever seen in your life, security-wise. You know, we'd have some of the guys would go a day ahead of time, make sure the hotel was all set up. We would land in that city, and they'd be waiting for us at the airplane to give us our room keys, the room lists, so everybody knew where to go when we got there. So it was very, very well organized, and that's important. You got people working for it that did their job, and that's the most important thing. And it became routine. It's just like anybody that has a job. Once you get into it and you do it well, it's just like another job somebody else has. It only is a little more exciting, my job.
I know I'm prejudiced, but I thought we had the best group out there. I thought our security was the tightest in the business. I mean, I thought that we did the best job. I think our management was great. I thought the Colonel did a great job in those days for Elvis, what he did for him. I thought Joe Esposito was fantastic, road manager. We had everything. It was a tight, well-oiled machine. We had a lot of people and 3 aircraft, and we kept them moving for 21 days at a time. And we rarely played more than one show in one city. So, you know, we had to know what we were doing, and we got to be pretty good at it.
The tours were pretty tough, mainly because the mode of travel. They had a show plane for us, but because this was in the days when not a lot of money was spent on production, even though it was going on at that time. There was the real classy rock and roll tours, but I think the Colonel had more of an idea of just keeping everything as low cost as possible. With that in mind, we had a show plane that carried lighting, sound, a whole bunch of different people, all the band and orchestra members, and we'd have to fly early in the morning because people would have to get there and set up. And it was really hard after doing that kind of electric show to go back to the hotel, jump in bed, and try to get your normal rest and get back up and, you know, at dawn and whenever, and get off on a show plane.
Hey baby, I ain't asking what you do. No, baby, I ain't asking what you do. Well, just a bigger hunk of love. I'll be a stingy little mama.
Get to a city, I got 12 strings from the town, I got an orchestra from the town, and you get in a lot of cities, and music's not what it is in the major hubs. You know, it's like it's a struggle, and to rehearse an Elvis show without a rhythm section is a major struggle, because you know it goes to so many places. It was not just this; it's big orchestra, it's small band, it's rock and roll. You know, half the guys are not acclimated to playing that wide a range of music, and. After the first tour we did with the band, in each town, I went to the Colonel, and I said, I had Diskin and the Colonel, and I said, you know what? I said, we got to cut this band down for the tours. Colonel says, Joe, I've been in a lot of places. I've never heard a band leader come to me and says, I want a smaller band.
I think the orchestra brought a classiness and a fullness of music to Elvis's shows that can only be achieved with an orchestra. I like orchestrated music. I like orchestras. I like rhythm bands too. but I love orchestras to enhance them. And I think they did a terrific job of enhancing. The rhythm band was always out front, the lead guitar and when the piano had a lead and so forth, they were always out front. But the orchestra built the foundation underneath everything that really makes it sound good.
They were all studio musicians. You know, they weren't just band members. These guys were the guys that not only recorded with Elvis, but they recorded with half the people, and here in Nashville too, recorded with everybody in the business. So they were, anytime you heard a live Elvis concert, from the quality of music, it was like listening to a record.
And of course we had this huge orchestra behind us, and the suites, and originally we had the Imperials. I think they made the decision that they didn't want to continue on for personal reasons and so forth. So I think Elvis had always admired J.D. Sumner and the Stamps, and so they came along then, and they were along till the end.
So in the spring of '71, we sent them our latest LPs, and Elvis really liked what we did. And in addition to that, J.D. had known Elvis back when J.D. was singing with the Blackwood Brothers in Memphis, and Elvis was a kid working for the electric company. But they did it that way, and Charlie called us up and said, Elvis likes your singing and wants to know if you guys are interested in doing background vocals for him. So we said, of course, J.D. said yes.
He loved that quartet sound, and that became a part of everything he did. And then he brought in the Sweet Inspirations, the black girls, because he loved the black choir feel. And his music, if you really listen to it, was a combination of the black gospel and the white Southern gospel. It's really just a blend of those two musics. And he wanted that feel and that sound, you know, in every song that he sang. And so it was an unbelievable ensemble on stage. I mean, here we were with the Stamps Quartet and the Sweet Inspirations, all of us singing together. It was a huge sound. It was like singing with this incredible choir every night, and then Elvis with a full orchestra. There was just nothing like it. There was nothing like it.
He had fantastic musicians, and these guys were a really tight-knit bunch of guys, and they recorded with Elvis, they traveled with him, and they were fantastic. He had the best musicians out there, Joe Guercio, you know, and the orchestra that Joe had, and Joe to this day is still, you know, he's still writing charts and leading orchestras around the world.
And Mr. Joe Guercio.
The glue came together the first rehearsal because, you know, they're pros, my guys are pros, I've been doing it for a long time, and Elvis was blown away, really blown away. Then he started with those karate chops, you know, and every once in a while I took him as cutoffs, and he loved that, and he loved all of that.
He loved to be spontaneous off of things that he would hear, and he had the ability to draw that out of you. It's the style of which he would draw it out. He never told me what to play, never. He always, and from the very beginning, he says, I want you to do your thing. I don't want to try to sound like all the records or any of that stuff. You play how you feel it.
You're gonna set me on fire. My brain is flaming. I don't know which way to go. Yeah.
Of course, you know, he had the Sweet Inspirations out there, and he had the Stamps Quartet and J.D. Sumner. He had Kathy Westmoreland. But you take all those individual great talents, and I used to say this a lot, that you took these disparate personalities, these different egos, these different talents, and Elvis on stage did what he did off stage. He melded every one of us into a very, very tight-knit, well-oiled machine. We did our jobs, and we did it very well, whether it be handling baggage or handling taxis or luggage or handling the music that was produced on stage. But then Elvis would turn to that audience. And I've never seen anybody in my life that could mesmerize an audience like he could. He was almost messianic. I mean, I can understand why some of these people talk about the Church of Elvis and all that. You know, I mean, I don't get it, but I'm telling you, the man could make you stand up, sit down, cry, laugh, applaud, whatever he wanted to do. And he could do it with his mannerisms, and he had an incredible control over people at those concerts.
It's coming closer, claims that I reach in my body. Please won't you help me? I feel like I'm drifting away.
He had such a great voice. There's no choice about it. The guy could sing anything he was to sing. Gospel, country, music, anything, pop songs. He loved songs, very strong songs. And over the years, his voice got stronger and stronger because he loved to sing, and he sang a lot. And as you can tell, a lot of songs, Elvis had high notes. He'd like to see him become a bass singer, but he wasn't good enough for a bass singer. But he loved doing that. And as years went on, he learned more. He was very good as far as music goes. And recording sessions, he would say, I want, play a little guitar over here, James, this, I want to do this, the drummer do this. But yet he couldn't read music. It was all a natural thing that was given to him.
A good portion of the songs that we did live, you know, he liked to end with this huge high note and hold it, you know, because that's how he does his thing like this, and we're holding the note, and so the poor house singer over here is, you know, really pinching it all, so to speak. And, so that was the only hard part, but we loved that kind of stuff. I mean, the harder and louder and higher he sang, I mean, the more we loved it. So.
Hunk of Burning Love is one of the songs that Elvis came up with on the first recording session we did with him. And I wasn't used to working with him in the studio yet, so didn't quite know how to act. So before we recorded, Charlie Hodge, who was his right-hand man, came to us and he said, guys, he said, when Elvis records, he likes to do what he likes to do. And he said, if he points at you, he wants you to do something musically to impress him. So we were singing Hunk of Burning Love. We was doing the ending, and he's going, you know, Hunk of Burning Love. And he's doing hunk of burning love, hunk of burning love. And he pointed at me. And I didn't know what to do. I was petrified. And so when he pointed at me, he acted like he went kind of like this, and I thought, well, he wants me to sing something high. So I just screamed real high. I tried to do it on pitch, of course, but I screamed real high. He said, that's it. So for the next 3 hours, we went through that song and did that ending over and over and over until we got it just like he wanted it. And I was hoarse when I got done because I had screamed a high C was what it was. It was a high C, which is literally that's very high for a man. And that's how that came out. And it all happened in the studio at RCA Victor in Hollywood, California.
Treat me like a fool, treat me cool, all God would love me.
Elvis was probably the most generous person I know. It was just absolutely amazing. Money was, he said it was, he loved to make money so he can enjoy life and his friends can enjoy it with him. And he was just like that. Money was not that important except to buy things and things that people couldn't get on their own. He would take care of. He bought his cars, jewelry, total strangers he'd buy things for, and reading an article in the paper about somebody needing something, and he'd tell one of the guys, go get that for him and drop it off at their house.
I'll never forget this. I was in the back seat with my legs stuck out like a chicken, you know, and I said, Elvis, you can't buy me a house. And he slowed down and looked over at me and took those sunglasses off and gave you the look, you know, and he said, I can do anything I want, I'm rich.
One time, he bought Priscilla a horse. Priscilla loved animals and horses, so he bought her a horse for Christmas. So he bought her this beautiful horse. Then he realized, who's she going to go riding with? She needs somebody to ride with. So then he bought Jerry Schilling's girlfriend at the time, Sandy, and he bought her horse so she could ride with Priscilla. So eventually he told Jerry Schilling one day, he said, Jerry, let's you and I get a couple of horses so we all ride together. So that's all it took. So then he bought horses for everybody, all at Graceland. Then we run out of space, so he went out and bought a ranch in Mississippi, a beautiful ranch, 160 acres, a beautiful 4-acre lake with a big, one thing that really inspired him, I think, there was a big cross in the middle of this lake, lit up at nighttime. And Elvis was a very religious person anyhow. And he said, I was meant to buy this piece of property. So he bought that property, and before you know it, where all the horses had moved out to this beautiful, beautiful ranch, had a gorgeous house on it. Then he said, we all have to live here. So he bought trailers for every one of us. Beautiful trailers, put it on the ranch. And he bought pickup trucks for everybody. Now we're cowboys. We walk around with cowboy boots, and we're cowboys. And he tried to buy me a horse. Elvis, I'm Italian from Chicago. I don't ride horses. So it was really funny. By the time, we had a great time for about a year and a half, and he does to the fullest, and all of a sudden, okay, that's it. I'm no longer a rancher. And that's the way he did things in life. That's the way it was in life. Cars, planes, women, everything. That's the way it was.
If you ever go, darling, I'll be oh so lonely. I'll be sad and blue, crying over you.
He never quibbled about money's fees, you know, to be paid for working with him. He kind of took pride, and he'd even say that from the stage sometimes. That this is one of the highest paid bands in show business, ladies and gentlemen. You know, he was being silly, but at the same time, he was what he thought, you know. And he loved to lavish people with rings and bracelets and necklaces and those kind of things. You know.
Begging on my knees, all I ask is please, please love me. Whoa, oh yeah.
I've seen him take diamond rings off of his finger and give it to people standing or somebody at the front of the stage. He gave the stamps, he gave us a brand new bus to tour in. We, at the later years of about the last year that he was alive, we came in off of a tour, and there was a brand new bus waiting for us when we got back to Nashville that he bought it at the time. I mean, you're talking, I don't know, $65,000, $70,000 or more for a bus, and I'm kind of guessing that could have been more than that. These days they cost $500,000. So I mean, he was the most generous guy I've ever seen. You know, generous to a fault. I mean, he just gave away everything, and people, Colonel Parker, you know, just was, I'm sure, having fits all the time about him giving away so much.
Step into my heart. Leave your cares behind. Welcome to our world, built with you in mind.
If the tour had gone particularly well and he made good on it, you know, he would give us, bring us to the suite at the end of the tour and give us some kind of a bonus check sometimes. And usually he'd just give it to J.D. and then we'd have it split it up, you know. He'd split it up between us. And then often he would give jewelry to each one of us. He had a jeweler, Lowell Hayes Jewelers in Memphis, who would custom make jewelry for him. And so he bought us jewelry. He bought these custom-made rings that we had that had stamps across them. Great big, I don't know, they were all gold and like real deals, you know, big things. It went all the way across your finger like that. And he bought us those, gave them to us, bought us all 2 different times. He bought us some watches and gave them to us. And I've got, of course, the TCB necklace, and I've got a couple of rings, gold rings, one with the black star sapphire and a diamond in it, and that he gave me, and another one with just a kind of a black stone in it. But he was just like that. He liked to give people things.
I think probably one of his greatest pleasures in life was making people happy. He did it on stage, and he did it, well, he never forgot that he had very humble beginnings. And to see someone else who was going through a difficult time, if he could give them something that would lighten their burden, even just for a little while, it was his pleasure to do so.
Thank you very much. I'd like to sing a song that's probably the saddest song I've ever heard. It goes like this.
Well, when you're a big star, it is a lonely life because it's tough because are people here for me, the star, or my money, or really me? And that's a tough situation because they, most of the people are, I want to meet Elvis Presley, the star, and all stuff like that. So are they loving you for you, yourself, or the star? And that's a tough life. It's a real tough life. And knowing if somebody likes you for that reason. So, and not only that, you can't go out in public as much as you can because everybody's following you, tracing, taking pictures. And the thing about Elvis, he loved his fans more than any star I know of because he knew they put him where he was. And he'd stop, sign autographs for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I said, Elvis, we got to go. We got to catch a plane. The crew's waiting. He said, Joe, the plane ain't going anyplace till I get there. So, and that's the way he was. He really loved his fans because he knew they made him who he was.
I'm so lonesome I could cry.
There was a lot of separation. I think a lot of that happened in the early days before me when the Colonel set up this mystique of Elvis. And, and Elvis did have a rather lonely life, particularly toward the end there, and he didn't get out among his fans like maybe at one time he did, and maybe even like he wanted to at one time. And he stayed in Graceland a lot and actually upstairs a lot in his bedroom, and about the only place he'd get out anymore would be to ride motorcycles late at night with a large entourage of us, or he'd play racquetball there at the house and on tour. And his life became, I guess, a bit stilted in that way.
I'm so lonesome I could cry.
Drugs have an effect on anyone, and it was all prescription medication. It's been brought out that this started when he was in the army in Germany. In order to wake up and be alert in the morning, the sergeant gave him pills. In order to enable him to sleep at night, he was always an insomniac. And that's how it started. He couldn't get to sleep at night, and then he couldn't wake up in the morning, so the pills made that possible. And it just grew. No one expects an addiction to happen. But once you get into it, you're stuck.
In the summer is gone, I'll be lonely, oh so lonely.
We couldn't see it because we were there all the time, but obviously the drugs were making him weaker. His body was getting weaker, because ultimately we know that that's what killed him. But I can only think of maybe a couple of times in touring, a couple of shows where I felt like, boy, I wish he wish he wasn't singing tonight. You know, he's not himself, and it was obvious. But the rest of the time, and we literally did hundreds of shows between Vegas and touring. I mean, hundreds of shows. He was pretty much right on every night.
I'll remember too your voice as soft as a warm summer breeze, your sweet laughter mornings after.
When Elvis was on the road, he was actually better. So often at Graceland, he would go into his bedroom and he wouldn't come downstairs. He'd be up there for days. At least on the road, he was moving, and he appreciated his fans. He wanted to do the best possible show for them that he could.
I mean, I'm certainly not going to sugarcoat this. I mean, Elvis certainly took prescription medication to excess, and he had physical ailments that he was attempting to address. I'm no doctor, but I understand that's true. But then he also had physical ailments, I'm sure, that were largely caused because of the intake of too many medications. And there were occasions where I think that Elvis's performance probably was not what it could be. But I will tell you that nobody knew that more than Elvis. We talked to a lot of the fans that were at some of those concerts, and some of them may say they noticed it and some didn't. Many didn't because of the power that Elvis had on that stage. But the guy that knew it the best was Elvis when he got in that car. And he would be angry, but he would be angry at himself. So he struggled quite a bit with that dichotomy of, I need these prescription drugs. On the other hand, there's something wrong with my performance, and the fans didn't get their money's worth. They didn't get 100% of me tonight.
Colonel was devastated. He was watching his best friend disappear before his eyes. He'd gone up to see him, and he came down, and he had tears. He said, "I've lost him. This is not the man I knew as Elvis. What are we going to do?" And he didn't know. He tried. In fact, one of the reasons that they split when they did, very briefly, was because Colonel and Vernon, Elvis' father, talked about it, and Colonel said, if Elvis isn't on the road, maybe then we can get him to deal with this. But it didn't work.
Wise men say only fools rush. Well, I can't falling in love with.
Well, August 16th, we were getting ready to go on tour that. We were supposed to go to Portland, Maine to do a show the next night. So we were all there. I was there at the house getting ready to set things up, with pilots and everybody, and getting ready to leave that afternoon. And that's when the phone call came from upstairs. And I went upstairs and called the ambulance and went to the hospital with him, and that was it. He left us. He left us. Very, very tough, very hard, and it was just. It took me about 3 months to realize he was gone, that he was not coming back.
Would it be a sin if I can't help falling in love with you?
Colonel and his staff, which included me, were in Portland, Maine, when Colonel got the phone call that Elvis had been taken to the hospital. And then the next call said he was gone. And we went into shock, basically. We couldn't believe it. This was totally unexpected. I guess we always expected him to be immortal. And in a sense, he still is.
as we drove up the Graceland driveway, and I want to say it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, David Stanley was speeding down. He had like a little bronze-colored 240Z, a little Nissan, and he came down, and as he went by, he slowed down a little bit, rolled the window down, and he said, "Have you heard?" He said, "Elvis is dead." And then he just left, and it kind of startled me, and I thought, well, what was that? So I wasn't sure if I heard him say Elvis is dead, and so as we got a little bit closer, I could see a ambulance sitting in front, a medic ambulance in front of Graceland. And honestly, the first thing I thought it was Vernon. And I thought, well, I misunderstood it, and it's Vernon, because Vernon had a bad heart. So we pulled around the back, and I asked my dad, I said, "Why don't you wait here for a few minutes, let me see what's going on." So I walked in the back door through the jungle room. And when I did, I apparently had gotten there right at the moment when Dr. Nick had come back with the ambulance attendants to tell Vernon officially that Elvis had died at the hospital. They had already found him and taken him. And so I walked in the middle of that. And Vernon was, in his fashion, it's sort of a rural southern fashion, he was grieving loudly. He was wailing, "My baby, my baby, my baby's gone." And he saw me come in the door, and one of the first things I heard was, "Sam, you don't have to go. It's all over. You don't have to go now. It's all over." And of course, Lisa's running around. She's just 9 years old, and she wasn't crying, as I recall, but she just kept walking up to people saying, "My daddy's dead. My daddy's dead."
Well, I was at home. I had just gotten home. I'd been in San Francisco, the Bay Area. I'd been doing a recording project with Jerry Garcia, the band, that whole summer. And I got home on a Friday night, and we were booked to start a tour on the following Monday. The show plane was going to go out on Saturday and arrive in Maine. But I had not been in my own bed, and I had a brand new son, and I just wanted to be in my own home for a couple of nights. So I was going to go out commercial and fly in Sunday. So I wasn't on the show plane. But we got a call Saturday morning. My wife's mother called us up and said, "You're not going to believe this, you know. Listen to the radio." And so we did. And so I immediately called Graceland. I had his private number and called him, and Felton Jarvis picked up the phone. And all I said was, "Felton, is it true?" He said, "Yeah, Ronnie, it is."
This is the honest truth. We were traveling, doing our gospel tour. We're on our bus. I'm back in my bunk on the bus. We have beds on the bus because we spent so much time in it. And I'm sleeping, and I have a dream, and this is the truth. I've dreamed that we are singing, that the group, the Stamps Quartet, we're standing over in a situation to my dream where we were standing in a church, up in the choir section of a church, and we were overlooking a casket. There was a person in the casket. There was no face in my dream, but there was a person in the casket, and we were singing at this funeral. And so help me, this was about 2 weeks prior to us actually standing in the funeral was at Graceland. It wasn't in a church, but we were standing behind his casket singing.
J.D. called me and told me that the Stamps were going to sing at the funeral. And I had been gone for a while, but he wanted to know if I would be interested in singing. And I said, definitely, I want to come and sing with the Stamps at the funeral. So we went, and I sang the song When It's My Time at the funeral. I didn't do all the real high stuff in it that I did on stage. I just sang it. And the Stamps, I sang it with the Stamps. And then James Blackwood sang, I think he sang How Great Thou Art. And Jake Hess sang one of his special songs. And those two singers were two that Elvis really thought was magnificent. And they were. They're both gone on home now. But they were both magnificent singers. And he kind of copied some of his singing after Jake Hess, as a matter of fact. And so they sang at the funeral, and that was it for me.
Glory, glory, hallelujah.
we got there, and it was just the next day. Jackie gave the eulogy. Jackie gave a great eulogy, and he closed it by saying Elvis has left the building. And these stamps were behind Kathy, behind the casket. And I said, I want to conduct this. And we did How Great Thou Art. And that was just, you know, suddenly all this goes up in smoke. But you know, people like EP, they had to die then. Now, can you imagine him being an old man? I can't. I can't see Marilyn Monroe being an old lady. I mean, there's a fox, and let her go out as a fox. You know, and I guess same with Rudolph Valentino. You know, there's some people that are not supposed to get old. James Dean, they're not supposed to get old. You know, look how they got him covered. I mean, it's always going to be that. You're never going to see anything older than him.
As we were flying from Portland, Maine to Memphis, I said to Colonel, I have to go shopping. I have nothing in my suitcase that is suitable for a funeral. These are my working clothes. And Colonel said, if they were good enough for you to work for Elvis, they're good enough for you to say goodbye. So, we weren't properly dressed according to what society thought, but we were still there. So, it still comes right back, you know. When you think about it, you go right back to where we were. And it changed our lives totally. We were never the same. Never.
It was a big shock to all of us. Anybody who was close to him understood tremendously. And it's just, but I just feel so good today that he's still out there stronger than ever. And these young kids today, 5, 6, 10-year-olds, love this guy when they hear his music and see him on television or a rerun or something. Then they absolutely idolize him. They meet me, they're thrilled to death. And I said, you know, I'm the one that I'm the lucky guy. I got to know him. And they're just thrilled to meet me because I was so close to him. And that makes me really feel good that people still want to know about my friend Elvis.
Before